It's NFL Week 18. I am Nick Whalen, joined, as always, by John McKechnie for a full, comprehensive, no-holds-barred betting breakdown of the week ahead. And boy, do we have a fun one, John. Week 18, it's always chaotic. You're always scrambling, reading up, trying to decide, all right, who's playing for what? How long is player X going to remain in the game? It's chaotic, but it's also fun. And it's going to be a pretty wacky week. I don't know if we're going to go into the final week of the Circa Million contest being like, all right, lock it up, baby. We're going 5 for 5. But we're coming off of a decent week there. We'll talk through some of the games that we may be using in the Circa contest. And as always, we'll go chronologically, starting with the 2 Saturday games, giving our thoughts, giving our leans, handing out some prop bets. And we'll finish out with the parlays and teasers, as well as the locks of the week. First and foremost, John, you've been all over the place the last couple of weeks. You're jet setting to Vegas. You're in Baltimore. You're down in Florida. But I see you're back in the friendly confines of Atlanta this week.
Yes, finally back, finally settled. Got my dog Bentley having a power nap behind me, so he's keeping watch on everything, making sure that I podcast well, even while he's asleep. But yeah, we're feeling good, and as luck would have it, since we go chronologically, we're starting in Baltimore. I was able to, among my travels, find a shirt that I was freaking out that I had lost. But I found it. This from, of course, the magical 2019 season when the Ravens were beating the Bengals so bad that Lamar was just hanging out on the sideline with his tack glasses on. That season, it didn't end well. We'll unpack my neurosis about that next week and 2 weeks from now. But for right now, I'm happy as a clam. Like I could not be happier with how the Ravens have done with their gauntlet. It feels like every true contender this year has had to go through a stretch of their schedule where it's been just absurd. The Eagles, the Bills,
the Jaguars,
Cowboys, Jaguars, of course. But the Ravens, I really didn't know how I felt about the team until the Niners game. And you're not going to turn anyone over for the rest of the season 5 times in all likelihood. But that was a crazy game. Last week was more of a classic beatdown of the Dolphins. We were on the Ravens.
More of a tasteful beatdown.
Yeah, something of a nice vintage. But yeah, I mean they're rolling. They get to chill this week, and I'm going to do the same. But at the same time, there's a number on this game. The Ravens are underdogs. That when they clinched the number 1 seed last time, they also rested all their starters in the last week of the season. Did that lead to too much rust last time? I don't know, but I think it's the right move. The Ravens with the the voodoo doll of injury luck that they seem to have. Best to just keep everyone out of harm's way this weekend and then just kind of readjust with how they do the bye week. But either way, they are home dogs against the Steelers, but it's by more than a field goal. And I know that they don't really have much going, that not a lot of motivation to win this game necessarily, but this is a pretty serious rivalry. And it's even with the way that the Steelers are played over these last 2 weeks since switching over to Mason Rudolph and actually having something that resembles an NFL offense, Tomlin is a favorite on the road here. I don't know. Where are you with this one? I kind of like the Ravens to keep this one close enough.
I would like the Ravens to actually tell us who's not going to play first and foremost. And I know there's plenty of gamesmanship afoot this time of year. We basically know which quarterbacks are going to be in. Other than that, we're not really sure. And as our guy Benson notes in the chat, I was going to just say this exact same thing. It's like, do they treat this as a preseason game, which they've had enormously tremendous results in the preseason? I think at 4, I'm willing to hear you out on the Ravens. In terms of motivation, obviously this means way, way more to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're still playing to try to get their way into the postseason. They're going to be going full bore. And, even if the Ravens, start with most of their regular defense, how long do those guys play? How big of a drop off is there going from, your 1s to your 2s? I think they could be without Marlon Humphrey. I think he's already ruled out, right? So he's going to be out. Kyle Hamilton's been banged up. I'd be surprised if they push him. He's been banged up the last few weeks now. Zay Flowers is doubtful. He's not going to play. Obviously, Lamar's not going to be out there. To me, it's how many points can the Ravens score? Because I don't think the Steelers are going to come in and like put 35 up on the Ravens backups. Like I think they have enough pride. Like you said, divisional matchup. They're not just going to completely lay down. And I think something you have to consider, and this applies to a bunch of games on the slate. It's not like these backups are just running around out there. It's like these are guys that are trying to prove that they belong on the team next year or trying to audition for another team's roster next season. They're all NFL players. They're not just out there to just lose this game by 30. And I don't think the Steelers are really capable of blowing out the Ravens, even the backups. Like that's not who the Steelers are. So it's just a question of, what is Tyler Huntley able to do? Do we see, any audition? Like, does Malik Cunningham come in for a couple of series? Do we see Josh Johnson at any point? Like, I just want to know how seriously the Ravens are taking this, because I don't think there's this like massive gap between the Ravens without a few of their top guys and the Steelers. It's just, to what point do they try to, kind of turn this into an audition for younger players versus, hey, we're going to go out and try to win this game.
Well, this is Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley that we're talking about.
Right.
Not every team has multiple Pro Bowlers in their quarterback room, but I think in a weird way, roundabout way, this is a really important game for Tyler Huntley, because I think the Ravens didn't just go out and get Malik Cunningham for no reason. I think that Huntley might be getting a little expensive as far as backups are concerned. He's still not a huge cap hit one way or the other, but like he kind of does need to like cement that he is the backup
right
for Lamar Jackson going forward, like he has been these last few years. But beyond that, I think the weather is going to be terrible in Baltimore on Saturday, like kind of just a sleet, freezing rain type of game. So
that.
I think that works against what's been working well for the Steelers in recent weeks, which is the passing game. I don't know how well Mason Rudolph plays in conditions. He's an Oklahoma State guy. So, I mean, like we don't have a ton of sample dating back there. I know he's been in Pittsburgh for a while and everything, but I just feel like this is going to be a slop fest. I like the under in this game. And, if we're going with that it's going to be fewer than 35 points put up on the board, I think it stands to reason that this one ends up being close and Baltimore ends up covering this one.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm going with like a 20-17 win for the Steelers. Maybe even less. Maybe it's 17-14, something like that. And you are right. I fiercely tried to Google the weather in Baltimore. I accidentally typed Ravens weather, and that just brought up a really weird result. But I do have the Baltimore forecast. Saturday during the day, snow during the morning will mix with a change to rain during the afternoon. High temperatures around 40, winds 10 to 20 miles per hour, chance of precipitation 100%.
Gross. I would not want to be sitting out in that one if I'm a fan. Respect to those that do want to go sit out in that. Maybe it deters some of the Pittsburgh faithful that often make their way to Baltimore to just stay back, just stay on back there. But either way, I like the Ravens in a slop fest plus 4 points.
Baltimore, by the way, they're of course locked into the 1 seed in the AFC. Pittsburgh can clinch a wild card spot with a win plus a Buffalo loss or a Jacksonville loss or a Houston-Indy tie, which to me is not totally out of the question. Depending on what happens with Jacksonville, it actually might be in Houston and Indy's best interest to tie. Steelers can also make the playoffs with a loss plus a Jacksonville loss plus a Denver win plus Houston and Indy not ending in a tie. So they need some help, but these are not like inconceivable tiebreakers. So again, the motivation's on the Pittsburgh side here. But I'm with you. I think this is a bit of a rat line. I like the Ravens plus 4. Let's get to the Saturday night game. This one taking place in Indy, so we're not really concerned about the weather conditions here and what I will still refer to as the RCA Dome. I don't know if RCA is still a company anymore. I'm going to say probably not. Colts are 1.5 point favorites. That's where it locked in the Circa contest. 1.5 point dogs, at home. They were 1 point favorites earlier in the week. We've seen some gradual movement in favor of Houston. This is a Nick Whalen throw the hands up game. There's no love lost between these AFC South rivals. I have no idea what's going to happen. I do tend to lean toward Houston here. And this is, to me, kind of a pick the winner game. Certainly, I think it could be close. I trust CJ Stroud a lot more than I do Gardner Minshew. Sue me.
Did you ever go to the RCA Dome?
I've been to their current stadium. I've never went to the RCA Dome.
I've been to the Big Oil Drum as well. The RCA Dome, I think, is the worst sports arena that I've ever been to, though.
Really?
Yeah, that felt like so the concourses were tiny and carpeted for some reason. So you really felt like there was high potential for like just a catastrophic incident. Like it felt like a big walking fire hazard just
Sure.
being in that stadium. But the big oil drum, much nicer. That's where Georgia got their national championship a couple years ago. So all the best to that stadium.
I've seen the Badgers lose 2 Big Ten championship games as well as the national championship game in that building. That is a house of horrors for Nick Whalen.
Yes, it is. I apologize for dredging that up, but yeah, when it comes to this game, so many things point you in Houston's direction. That they have the edge at quarterback, and Stroud is back healthy. That helps, and I think it says something that Vegas views the Texans as favorites on the road in this spot, and obviously Indianapolis has been a tricky team to figure out over the course of this season. But I think they stopped being a team that you can't take seriously, right? Like they absolutely are. I mean, a win and they're in. They still have the chance to win the South, like you mentioned. And I mean, we got 2 great coaches here in their first seasons. But I feel like there's just a little bit more completeness and a little bit more pass rush ability on Indianapolis' side. Like they rack up the sacks. Houston on the other side have a really banged up defensive front. If that allows Jonathan Taylor to finally, much to the chagrin of his fantasy managers from this year, like actually have the Jonathan Taylor game, that's going to be a problem. And the less that we have to like rely on Gardner Minshew if we're Indianapolis in this spot, probably the better. But I still think he's going to do fine in this particular setup. So I like the home dogs here to go ahead and get this done and not just cover, but again, with just 1.5 points, I think they win this game outright. Indianapolis does.
We got some injuries on the Houston side. Noah Brown has been ruled out, which is sadly kind of a big deal for them, given where their receiving core is at right now. Obviously, Tank Dell's not coming back. They've been banged up all over the offensive line all season. Larry Tunsil ended up leaving last week against Tennessee. We don't know if he's going to be out there. So that's certainly something that could swing it. Their entire defensive line is also banged up. A defensive line that's played really well for the most part this season. Will Anderson's the one we're watching most. He's got an ankle heading into this one. Sheldon Rankins as well on the injury report. Malik Collins, Jonathan Greenard, all those guys could be in jeopardy. So this is one where I want to wait and see. If Houston ends up being down 3 of its 4 starting linemen and its number 2 receiver, at some point it's like, are we asking too much of CJ Stroud in this spot?
I think we would be. I think that he's phenomenal already, and he's going to continue to get better. But along everyone's like story arc, unless you're Tom Brady, like you need to take some lumps in big games to start your career. And I think this is that spot for Stroud and company. And I think that Houston, they've already kind of had a storybook season relative to expectations, but sadly, I think it does kind of run out here.
Let's go to Panthers-Buccaneers. This one's in Charlotte. We're seeing the Buccaneers as 4.5-point road favorites. That's where it locked in Circa as well. That's what I'm seeing at DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, PointsBet. You can check all those out at rotowire.com/betting. Got a great odds comparison page. Keep you abreast of the changing odds as we get to Saturday and Sunday. Man, what do we do with the Buccaneers? They had their opportunity to lock up the division last week. They could still do it this week. All is not lost. Tampa does clinch the NFC South with a win. Carolina, as we know, nothing on the line here. They have clinched the worst record. They will send the number 1 pick over to the Chicago Bears. They will. They're just really motivationally, they have nothing on the line here whatsoever. The draft pick would kind of be the one thing that you could have as a feather in your cap if you're trying to handicap the Carolina side of things. You take that out of it. I don't know, man. I mean, it's a train wreck that continues to get worse. You got an owner who's tossing drinks on the good fans at Everbank Field in Jacksonville. Should be in prison, if you ask me. I don't know if the fine is enough. Carolina, we were on them last week. I thought it was a pretty good spot against CJ Beathard. I thought that'd be a very low-scoring game. I didn't see the Jags defense showing up in the way that it did, bringing Bryce Young down, I think, 6 times. Josh Allen was all over him. Trayvon Walker had arguably his best game as a pro. The question is, could Carolina salvage something here? Can they pick themselves off the mat after their worst offensive game of the season? And think about what that means. I mean, this is a team that has had some dreadful offensive games. They had 124 total yards last week, 2.3 yards per play.
Ooh, the teal curtain rising to the occasion. You have no Trevor Lawrence, but the other Josh Allen there to pick you up, or maybe the Josh Allen.
The Josh Allen, as far as I'm
Let's say that
concerned.
much. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. The Bills have underperformed this year. The real Josh Allen has not. And yet, yes, David Tepper should be under the jail along with Big Dom from the Eagles. Both those
I was going to
guys.
say, I mean, possibly death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, we're generally not capital punishment guys, but I mean, these guys are really pushing us on that. But beyond that, I'm just running scared from this game. I got to be honest. I'm taking the coward's way out because I had so much faith in the Buccaneers last week. It felt like such a good setup for them. I know you have some great statistics when it comes to teams with something on the line in the final week of the regular season versus teams that are eliminated and with nothing to play for. And I mean, rarely do the teams with quote unquote nothing to play for have this little of nothing to play for as the Panthers do. Because like you said, they do not own the number one pick. Their reward for this season being as bad as it was is more Bryce Young. That's tough. But do we trust the Bucs to cover that on the road? That really is the question here.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that if we're taking the Panthers is because I think the Panthers hang with them and you feel good about them. It's more just I guess I was wrong about the Buccaneers. So I think I'm gonna have to take the Bucs just because the Panthers really are that bad, and there is something on the line here for the Bucs, and motivation being what it is and how hard it is to quantify in these spots. Yeah, I mean, you're not even going to impress the guy that's being the coach next year. So if you're the Panthers, nah, man, I'll go with the Bucs, but that's got to be I'm using 1 or 2 points if this is a confidence rating for this week.
Yeah, you mentioned that eliminated teams versus teams that need to win. Since 1990, the eliminated team is covering at about a 61% clip, 164-4, according to the Action Network. So that applies to Panthers, Bucs, Titans, Jags, Cardinals, Seahawks, Bears, Packers this week. Just something to keep in mind. I think you framed it perfectly. To me, I don't see the Bucs losing this game. They've already played a 3-point game with Carolina earlier this year, right? So we've kind of seen them struggle in this spot. It's more so, if Carolina steps up and stops the run, which I think they do. The final numbers were a little misleading last week. ETN had the 62-yarder that made it look like he was running all over him. You take that away, he has 15 carries for 40 yards. So I don't see this as an explosive spot for Rachaad White or the Bucs running game, which has been marginally better over the second half. And then you're putting the game on the arm of Baker Mayfield. And if you get a great Baker Mayfield game, we've seen a few of those this season, then the Bucs probably win and cover this game pretty easily. If you get a shaky Baker Mayfield game and he throws 2 picks, then I don't think I'm taking the Bucs with the points. So yeah, gun to my head, I'm with you. I think you just got to lean toward the overwhelmingly motivated spot here in Tampa, but this is not one that will be making the Circa card. That brings us to Browns-Bengals. Very, very difficult game. Bengals 7-point favorites, one of the biggest favorites on the board this week. A rare instance this season, John, where 7 points makes you the second biggest favorite behind only Dallas, which locked at 13.5 in the Circa contest. Browns, they've already announced that they will be resting several regulars. They are not only locked into the playoffs, but they're locked into their seed. So there's really nothing on the line here for Cleveland. They will be the number 5 seed in the AFC. Cincinnati, of course, eliminated from playoff contention. They currently would hold the 16th overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. This is one where I want to wait and see. I want to see who's going for Cincinnati. It's does it make sense to play T. Higgins, who's played through a ton of injuries this season? Jamar Chase, does he come back? Does he play in this game? I don't know. He's been limited with the shoulder injury. Didn't have a big week last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Does it make sense to play him in a meaningless game? I'm not really sure. So as of right now, I think I would just take the points with Cleveland. If Cincinnati says, hey, we're trying to just, put our best foot forward and play this like a real game, maybe we take them at their word. But right now, I don't know if I can trust that.
Yeah, I think, again, with the points being what they are, this being as big of a spread it is with the Bengals having as little to play for as they do. Like you said, the 16th draft slot that's right in the middle, the Mid-Cincinnati Bengals, dare I say.
Wow.
But beyond that, I know that the Browns aren't going to be rolling their top guys out there, and they've dealt with tons of injuries over the course of the seasons. They've kind of had an unbelievable season when you frame it that way. I don't know. I think that for DFS purposes, like I think this is going to be a really interesting game. You're going to get a lot of guys that you like to watch in college that don't really do much in the pros, like your Cedric Tillmans, your Chase Browns of the world. I'm excited to see them kind of get unleashed in this one. But when it comes to betting, I think trusting the Bengals to cover 7 or more with what they might be rolling out there, even with the lack of personnel that the Browns are going to be rolling out there, I think it's just a little bit too rich for my blood. I like the Browns here.
We will see Jeff Driscoll starting for the Browns. That is the expectation. Maybe we get some PJ Walker at some point, but I think this is the Jeff Driscoll audition, kind of see what he has.
Did you see the Driscoll revenge game narrative?
No, quite frankly, I don't. I do not see that.
No, but someone was tweeting about it yesterday and
I literally did not see it. No.
There was like a whole timeline about Driscoll like working his tail off to get ready for the start of the season. I think when Burrow was not going to be ready coming off the knee, maybe this was earlier, but either way, he was there until like the very end. He was like among the final round of cuts for the Bengals. I think that there was it was a bit of bad blood from Driscoll towards the Bengals, a bit of animus for them on his way out the door. So I don't know. I've always thought that Jeff Driscoll is an interesting player. He's extremely athletic for, just for a backup quarterback type of guy. But I don't know. I could see him going kind of nuts here.
Pretty athletic, sneaky athletic, some would say, for a backup quarterback type of guy. We'll see. Who else ends up sitting out for the Browns? They have not really announced anything beyond Flacco, but Cooper. Obviously Elijah Moore went out with what looked like kind of a scary concussion last week. David Njoku, he's on the injury report as well with an illness. I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland just kind of pulls a full rest with a lot of their key players, and maybe in that case it pushes us towards Cincy. But as of right now, this is kind of an incomplete grade for me. Let's go to Vikings-Lions. Fun game in the NFC North. Minnesota, despite losing last week against the Green Bay Packers, they are not fully eliminated. Detroit still has some seeding implications should they choose to pursue those. So Detroit has clinched at least the number 3 seed in the NFC. They cannot fall any further than that. That's where they currently sit. They could move up to the 2 seed with a win, plus a Dallas loss, plus a Philadelphia Eagles loss. And of course, they're playing in the early window. Those other 2 teams play in the late window. So they will not have the benefit of scoreboard watching, although you kind of have to assume at least one of those teams wins, likely Dallas. Minnesota, conversely, they could clinch a wild card spot. Here we go. With a win, plus a Green Bay loss, plus a Seattle loss, plus a Tampa Bay loss, or a win, plus a Green Bay loss, plus a Seattle loss, plus a New Orleans loss. So, I think both teams, you have to expect them to play hard. I don't think resting is in Dan Campbell's blood. Detroit kind of took their shot at the end of that game against Dallas, first of all, not wanting to go to overtime. Second of all, having a chance to really kind of seal up that number 2 seed. But the Detroit side of this is interesting to me because I think Minnesota plays it straight. I think you got to, it's unlikely that all those events that I just read off happen, but they could. Stranger things have happened in the world of sports. So Minnesota, I'm not worried about what their motivations are. They're going back to Nick Mullins, thank God. The question is Detroit. Do they play it straight?
I think they do. I think you said it right off the jump with Campbell. Like those guys are not chilling, but by any means this week. They probably are still pretty salty about what happened last week in Dallas. Once that penalty is called, just tie the game, man. It's just you had a great play. It didn't work out. Push it to overtime.
I want to know what the limit was. Like how far back until they actually would have kicked it?
We'll never know, but we need some Dan Campbell truth serum at some point this offseason. We got to get to the bottom of that. But it's 3.5 points against Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins might just hand the Lions some of those. I know these 2 teams faced each other very recently, and Mullins did just that, the 4 turnovers in that game, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it could be similarly ugly, that this one being in Detroit, season on the line. So I almost feel like all those things that need to happen for the Vikings to get in the postseason happen, except for them winning on Saturday or Sunday.
For what it's worth, as of earlier this week, Dan Campbell did indicate that he'll play starters. Again, there's a difference between starting with your starters and those guys actually playing, a full snap load. So that would be a concern as well. If we're taking the Lions at their word, I really like Detroit in this spot. I know the defense has been kind of a disaster. This feels like maybe one last opportunity to feel a little bit better about yourself heading into the postseason. What I do like more than anything in this game, John, is Nick Mullins over 265.5 passing yards. He was at, I think it was 411 against Detroit a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he's getting pulled in this game, and like you said, he threw 4 picks and he still was over 400 yards. I like the over on Justin Jefferson as well. Like I do think Minnesota can move the ball, but if Detroit does in fact play its starters for the full game, I think they're winning and covering.
Yep, I do as well. Give me the Lions in this spot. We don't love a number more than the field goal most of the time, but I think in this particular instance, I think the Vikings can help us in that sense.
Okay, I'm going to describe this following game in one word, John. Jets on the road at the Patriots. Patriots 2.5-point favorites. Our total 30.5. And if it closes under 31, I believe that'd be our lowest total in almost 20 years.
Wow. Okay, I have one word for all of that.
Yep. It could just be wow.
The first word that came to mind was stinky. But at the same time, I feel like we deserve a little bit more than that. I'll say it's sneaky. I think that this is a game we need to consider for the card. And I think I dropped this conspiracy theory on you on a podcast a few weeks ago. If Belichick is not going to be back and he's no longer in charge of being the GM of the New England Patriots, how, we look at coaches and we think about Belichick being one of the greats of all time, if not the greatest. To saddle yourself next to the likes of one Lovie Smith, as he did last year on his way out of Houston, which actually worked out in Houston's favor, oddly enough, with him winning that last game, losing the Texans, the number 1 pick in the process. I could see the Patriots coming out and winning this game. I do like the Patriots a decent bit in this game. The Jets, I mean, they've been just trying to talk themselves into things, I think, the entire season. And I think it's starting to run out a little bit for them. Yeah, I think it's the Patriots game.
I'm almost going to bite my tongue here. This is the stay away of the week for me. There's very little motivation on either side. I like your narrative here though. I do think if Bill Belichick knows internally that he's not coming back, then yeah, why is he helping New England secure a top 3 pick? Why would he care about that? So if we believe that that's the case, then sure, I think this is a decent spot for the Pats. Again, it's at 1.5. It's in New England. It's another Trevor Siemian game for the New York Jets, and I think on balance over the last few weeks, New England has somehow looked like the better team. I still like the Jets, playmakers quite a bit more than I do New England's, but I think the Patriots are still better coached. I think they've been a better defense. I think the Jets defense has been slightly overrated for most of the year, and it's been outright bad a few times over these last few weeks. So yeah, you could sell me on that. I will say though, it's like what if we get the inverse of this, and it's Coach K losing to North Carolina in his final ACC game, and then losing to North Carolina again in the NCAA tournament,
and then coming out and scolding the fans. Yeah. Shut up.
Anything's on the table with Belichick. Obviously, both teams are eliminated. New England would clinch at least the number 3 overall pick in the draft with a loss. There is a crazy series of machinations based on strength of record and whatnot, where some of those picks could end up moving around. The Jets currently slotted at number 8 in the 2024 NFL draft. They could climb as high as number 5 with a loss, plus wins by the Giants, Chargers, and Titans. So some maneuverability there. I think New England's a team that you have to worry about a little bit more. But yeah, this is really an impossible game to handicap. And if we want to lean on the Belichick narrative, honestly, I'm okay with that.
All right, good enough for me. That's the only one that I really had a leg to stand on with. Because once you get down into me breaking down the Jimmys and Joes for the Patriots offense against this Jets defense, things fall apart rather quickly. So I'll just say, all right, Bill, one more time.
Yeah, we spent quadruple the amount of time that I wanted to on that game. That's
Sorry.
on me. I'll take that one. All right, Falcons Saints. I guess a better game. This one's in New Orleans. Saints are 3.5-point favorites. 42 is our total. This one locked at 3.5 in Circa as well. Two teams that I do not trust, John. Really whatsoever. We were talking on the Circa video earlier today, talking through some of our potential picks. Dennis Allen, 4-16-2 against the spread, coming off of a straight up win in their last game. Saints, of course, beat the Bucs last week. Atlanta just continues to free fall. They looked terrible last week against Chicago. I would love to say, give me Atlanta with the points. The counterpoint to that is it's Atlanta.
And that counterpoint is huge. The Falcons, I just want to be done with the Falcons. Like the Saints at least like have the game once in a while where it's like, I understand the theory of this team. It's just so poorly coached that it doesn't always come out right. But, like they discovered that they have Juwan Johnson these last couple of weeks. They have Chris Olave. Alvin Kamara is dinged up. I think that is a problem, but your recourse for that is just like pounding the Falcons with Taysom Hill, like just tenderizing them with this big Mormon. I like that. So I don't know. I think the Saints do this. The stakes are huge for this game as far as the playoff scenario is concerned. Yeah, I think the Saints get this done. Again, it's another game with that number where we hate trusting this team with more than a field goal, but in this particular spot in the Dome in New Orleans, to be specific, give me the Saints. I know it's buying high on the Saints, but give me the Saints.
Does it matter to you whatsoever if it's Heineke or Desmond Ridder? Taylor Heineke limited again at practice today. Sounds like he's going to be as close to a game time call as it gets in the NFL.
Sadly, Atlanta has taken the fun out of Taylor Heineke and just turned their quarterback room into like the Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, like Spider-Man meme. Like they're both no fun to watch right now, which is, again, unfortunate because Taylor Heineke like might as well have like auditioned to like be on Jackass with the way he played in Washington, just the insane reckless abandon. He's like Dave England out there, but
that's awesome.
Arthur Smith, curse that man. He has turned him into this boring dude. That's no fair for anybody. If we're gonna have to watch the Falcons, it should at least be a little bit fun, and it's just not anymore. So no difference to me on which quarterback's back there.
There's like the Manning Passing Academy that we've been hearing about our entire lives for like these like college or these high school quarterbacks and some college quarterbacks to go and hone their skills. I think Heineke, Minshew, maybe Nick Mullins, Jameis, those guys should get together and host a camp for like other young reckless quarterbacks.
Yes, that's genius. And then hosted in New Orleans.
Right.
There we go.
And it's just like the tricks of the trade. It's like here's how you throw 4 picks in one game. It's like here's how you look off an open receiver and throw it into double coverage.
Like here's how to identify a guy being triple covered.
Yeah, you're just like breaking down film of bad throws. Like this is exactly what we want. Great play right there.
We love it. We love the moxie. The moxie rating on that one. The MXR is off the charts.
Yes, that's something that should be measured at the combine as well. It's like I don't 40 time. That's all well and good. 3-cone drill, great. I want like a spark moxie rating.
Yeah. Like Drake May just doesn't even have a pulse on that. Like where's the moxie on that guy? I'm downgrading.
Disgusting. The one thing I will say about the Saints, and I don't want to rain on your parade here, Alvin Kamara might not play. Did not practice at all today. He's been banged up all week. Obviously left last week's game against Tampa. Chris Olave, we're monitoring him closely. He's been limited all week. That was the case again today. And Juwan Johnson, our guy, non-participant yesterday. Our guy Katuri is writing a note on him right now. So once that note is completed, we will give you an update on Juwan Johnson.
Shout out ECAT.
Yeah, right. I mean, just in the minds as always. But the Saints could be without arguably their 3 of their 4 best offensive players. So something to monitor there and something that I probably wouldn't lock in right now. What's on the line side of things here? New Orleans clinches the NFC South with a win and a Tampa Bay loss. The Saints can clinch a playoff berth with a win plus a Seattle loss plus a Green Bay loss. So a lot on the line there. Atlanta somehow can still clinch the division. I believe they cannot get a wild card, so they're eliminated from the wild card, but they can still win the division with a win over New Orleans plus a Tampa Bay loss.
Ooh.
So there it is.
All right, let me run through that in my head as we get into the next game.
Okay. Well, the next game, as luck would have it, is Jags-Titans. This one is in Nashville. Jags are currently 3.5-point favorites. Our total sits at 41. We've seen pretty significant line movement in this game over the last few days, John. Jags were up to 5.5-point favorites about 48 hours ago. That has slowly moved in favor of Tennessee. I think it could get back to 5.5 if we get confirmation on Trevor Lawrence. He's been throwing at practice. He has not been necessarily a full participant in those practices, dealing with the shoulder and now a left finger injury as well. We've been through the song and dance like 5 times in the last 5 weeks with Trevor Lawrence. He's played in 3 of their last 4 games. Obviously didn't play last week. As a Jaguars fan, as somebody who follows this team very closely, I would be very surprised if he doesn't at least try to play. I don't know what he's going to look like, but I would be surprised if he's not out there for the first snap.
Yeah, I would as well. So I'm going under the assumption that Lawrence is out there as well. This is tricky. Benson notes that it's down to 3.5 at Circa. So
That's
I mean
right.
that is significant movement, relative to the 5.5 where it was earlier this week. And frankly, I can see it, because the Titans, they live to be the spoiler, right? And Vrabel is just that kind of coach. But I think that they're just kind of out of steam a little bit. I mean, their quarterback situation is abhorrent right now. I mean, you got like a 60% Will Levis or Ryan Tannehill, whichever guy kind of draws the short straw to just get sacked a ton of times. I think that kind of is the key in this game. Like, even if this Jags offense continues to look, mired and all that, the way that the Jags defense played last week and the personnel that it has generally, and for a lot of the season, it's been a great defense, especially against the run. If you shut down Derrick Henry, it's really hard for the Titans to win. Derrick Henry, I wouldn't say a shell of himself, but certainly not the kind of game-breaking threat that we're used to seeing anymore. So even, there's the counterpoint to that. Like, is this his last game in Tennessee? Does he go out? But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. I think that he's lost a step. The rest of the offense just isn't really that threatening, so you can really key on the run. Mm-hmm. So I could see this just being like the Jags don't really do it overly convincingly, but they still win by 7 to 10 points because Tennessee can't score in this one.
Look, if the Jacksonville defense shows up like it did last week, they're absolutely winning this game, and they're probably holding Tennessee under 15 points. So it's just a matter of, can they show up like that? It does look like we're trending toward Will Levis being available. I like that as a Jaguars fan. I'd rather face him than Ryan Tannehill, who I think gives them a higher floor. I think if you get one of the every 6 weeks good Will Levis games, then maybe Jacksonville's in trouble. But I would rather face him. I think he's also more sackable than Ryan Tannehill, although they both have just been pummeled over the last few weeks. Titans have taken 19 sacks over the last 3 games. And 2 of those have come against Houston. And Houston was extremely banged up without Will Anderson in one of those. The way that Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen played last week, I think that makes you feel good about Jacksonville. And, in the Circa contest specifically, if you can get the Jags at 3.5 and Trevor Lawrence is playing and that number moves to 5.5, I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah, so therein lies the benefit of having a little bit of time to marinate on this, because if we'll have the luxury of the Friday practice reports before having to consider this one. But if it plays out with Lawrence, I'm definitely not opposed to putting this on the card.
Okay, we like it. Tennessee, of course, eliminated from contention. They currently hold the 7th pick in the draft. Jacksonville clinches the AFC South with a win. Regardless of the result in this game, the Jags could still get in as a wild card with a Pittsburgh loss, a Denver loss to the Raiders, and Indy and Houston not ending in a tie. So that's what concerns me. I mentioned earlier, the Indy-Houston tie scenario, where it's like if the Jags were to lose to Tennessee, and let's say Pittsburgh loses on Saturday, obviously Denver doesn't play until later. But in that scenario, I think then Indy and Houston would want to tie and they'd both get in. It was like, we had that a couple of years ago, right? Was it Chargers-Raiders? And the Raiders
Brandon Staley.
The Raiders end up eschewing the tie and kick the game-winning field goal.
Yeah. And didn't they didn't get it though, right? Like Staley, it was like a self-destruct. Like they I don't know, it was like the button type of scene from the Dark Knight. I know we're not movie guys on this pod, but like the mutually assured destruction and I don't know. I felt like the Raiders got that one, and then they had to go to Cincinnati after that in the playoffs.
Yeah, my memory serves that if it had ended in a tie, both teams would have gotten in, but the
Yes.
Raiders had the ball last and decided to kick the field goal, so they got in, and the Chargers did not.
Right, but
Yeah.
there was an instance where Staley could have just done that, but then he
Oh
gave
yeah.
the ball back to the Raiders.
Yes, exactly. And I ended up winning my pick'em league on that game. I was leading going into it, and if me and there's one other guy who could have won it, if we had both just picked the same team, I would have won no matter what, obviously, because we both get the points or both lose the points. And I got like Jedi mind tricked into picking the Raiders, who I didn't think the Raiders were going to win. I was like, oh, he's going to pick the Raiders because he thinks I'm picking the Chargers, and I got duped.
But hey, it worked out, right?
It's the worst game of all time to have to sweat out for like $800. But
God.
yeah, hey, it worked out. I got the belt. All right, Seahawks-Cardinals. This one's in Arizona. Cardinals are 3-point dogs at DraftKings. The number is 2.5 in the Circa contest. I know you and we both have some feelings on the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is eliminated from postseason contention. They currently hold the number 4 pick in the NFL draft. That is, they're behind New England and Washington, and of course, Carolina/Chicago. That is by virtue of Arizona beating the Eagles last week. Seattle, pretty simple. They clinch a wild card with a win, but they also need Green Bay to lose.
I don't trust Seattle. I thought last week was a truer showing of who they really are, and I know there's a little bit of Tomlin magic baked in there as well, but that they just haven't been convincing this year. Like, if for as good as they were and fun last year with Geno and how great of a story as that was, like they've kind of had a lid on them as a result of the quarterback play, I feel like, a little bit this year. And obviously the Cardinals don't have a ton to play for here other than draft slot, but I think that they're going to stick with Kyler Murray personally. So it doesn't really matter if they don't have like a top 3 pick, although it would be nice for them to trade it if they did get there. But them beating Philadelphia last week, I think that just kind of signals that they're going to keep pushing forward here, play a little spoiler within the division, and keep the Seahawks out. So not only do I like the Cardinals plus 2.5 at home here, but I think I like them to win this one outright.
I think if you like them at 2.5, you have to like them to win. That's one of my money line dogs that I would play this week. I don't really trust Seattle. I think Seattle had a golden opportunity last week. They blew it. They let Mason Rudolph, of all people, of all men, come into their home and win that game. Seattle, if they win, they would have had a chance to control their own destiny. They wouldn't need to be relying on the Chicago Bears to beat the Packers this week to get in. And I think Arizona, to me, if you're ranking the like bad teams you don't want to play right now, they're a very close second behind Chicago.
Yes, no, absolutely, and we'll get to the Bears shortly, but I'm definitely spoiler alert, like in on them. But Cards, that really it comes down to and Mario was talking about this earlier. The defense is bad for Arizona, and you have like monsters like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. That if they're drawing 20, the way he put it was like they're drawing 20 targets, like that could be 200 receiving yards right there from those two alone. And with all of a sudden, and probably a touchdown or two, like all of a sudden, it makes you look at the game a little bit differently. But I'm just going to say that Geno has a bit of a clunker here, and I think that Arizona runs the heck out of the ball. They've been running the heck out of the ball since James Conner got back. Michael Carter looked okay last week, even. Remember him? He's on a bunch of my dead best ball teams. But no, I think the Cardinals can get this done. I really do.
Last thing I'll say about Arizona, if you like that side, and we'll talk about Bears-Packers in a moment. I don't want to spoil any of our thoughts there, but those games are going on concurrently. And if Green Bay's up big in the second half, Seattle, I think the writing's on the wall, right? And maybe there would be a pullback there. So relatively unlikely. I think Green Bay, Chicago will be a close game, but something to consider. Where if Seattle kind of knows its fate is sealed at some point, maybe you do lose a little bit of that juice going into the second half. Let's go to Bears-Packers. Packers are 3-point favorites. That's been the number all week. That's where it locked in Circa. Total sitting at 45. Oh boy. 2 years in a row, Green Bay's in this spot. Last year it was Detroit in week 18. They lose that game outright at Lambeau. This year it's the Chicago Bears with an opportunity to play spoiler. As we know, Chicago locked into the number 1 pick via Carolina. Their own pick currently sits at number 10. I don't think they care about that whatsoever. Green Bay, they're in with a win. They clinch a wild card spot with a victory. They could also clinch with a Vikings loss plus a Seahawks loss plus a Buccaneers loss, or a Vikings loss plus a Seahawks loss plus a Saints loss. So they'll be doing some scoreboard watching on Sunday, but clearly the path of least resistance here is just win this game against the Chicago Bears. What do you think we see here? I am very, very nervous about the Green Bay Packers defense. I'll say that.
I am too. We talked about on the Circa vid, but like last week is not indicative of who this Packers defense is. The previous 15 games were far more indicative. And I know the season started out with the Packers going into Chicago and kind of wrecking shop a little bit, and the Bears were kind of buzzy coming into this season, and then it was more of the same from Chicago. But they made those moves midseason, and it's really shored up that defense. The defense is playing really, really well, dating back to November. The offense has definitely gotten back on track since Justin Fields came back and got healthy, especially after the bye week. DJ Moore is rolling along pretty nicely right now as well. And going up against a Packers defense is really leaky. And now you have a Bears offense that's kind of multiple. They can gash you with the run, and they can actually, hit some passes down the field now. I think the Bears are really dangerous in this spot. And I think, I know the song remains the same as far as like last year being in this spot playing against the Lions, but I don't know. I feel like it's not going to be enough for the Packers. Like they know that they have that bad taste in their mouth from last year, and they've fought and clawed to even be in this spot to begin with, because they're not a great team this year. But no, I like the Bears here. I think they are playing a better brand of football right now. I think they not only cover but win outright as well.
I feel the same way. I do. I went back and forth on this one. I wrote up like 3 different write-ups for my article, and finally I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm taking the Bears. Part of it is some of the injuries on the Green Bay side. Aaron Jones remains limited. I think the expectation is that he's going to play, but might not be 100%. We'll see on Christian Watson. I think he's going to push to try to play. If he does, he's just always one of those guys that you worry about even making it through the game. And perhaps most importantly, Jaden Reed has remained limited all week. And the way they were talking about that chest injury earlier in the week, I think it's maybe not quite as severe as they initially thought, but I still think he's in a lot of pain. And if he's out there, he's not going to be 100%. I think the Packers defense is going to struggle here. There's that, to me, that is no question. I would be shocked if the Packers defense plays well in this spot. So it comes down to, can Green Bay score with the Chicago offense that's put up 852 yards of total offense over the last 2 weeks? And Chicago's defense, we know they've been playing a lot better since their midseason bye. I mean, they're top 5 in DVOA, top 5 in defensive EPA in that span. They forced 14 turnovers over the last 5 games. As great as Jordan Love is, he's still turnover prone. It's going to take a really, really, really good Jordan Love game, I think, for the Packers to win this, it's in the cards. He played great last week. He's on balance. He's had more good games than bad games this season. So it's possible, but I think you're asking a lot of Jordan Love. And I think, Packers offense versus Bears defense, you could say those maybe cancel out. Packers offense has been playing well. Bears defense is good. They'll limit the run. I think that's kind of a net neutral. But Packers defense versus Bears offense, I think the advantage goes to the Bears there.
There we have it. And do the Packers still have bad special teams too?
It's better than it used to be, but it's still, they got the Bisaccia bump, but it's still not, I wouldn't say it's an overwhelming strength.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Either way, I think you broke it down unit to unit correctly. And yeah, so therefore, edges to the Bears here. That
brings us to the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Chargers, a completely meaningless game. One of, I think, only 4 on the schedule. So we'll do this one quickly. Kansas City, they are locked into the number 3 seed in the AFC. LA eliminated from playoff contention. They currently hold the number 6 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. Our number on this one in the Circa contest is Chargers minus 3.5. And obviously this comes down to quarterbacking here for Kansas City. No Mahomes. We'll see on Travis Kelce. I think he's gunning for another 1,000-yard season. We'll see if Andy Reid cares enough about that to throw him out there. Rashee Rice has not practiced all week. Isaiah Pacheco, obviously, he's been banged up of late. I think all those guys could end up being limited, and it will be Blaine Gabbert for the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you have any real thoughts here? This is just screaming stay away to me.
Yeah, this to me is what Jets-Pats was to you. Like, I really don't have a ton to add here because, frankly, the more I talk about it, the more I'm probably wasting the listeners' time by making something up, because it's impossible to truly gauge what either side is bringing to the table here. The Chiefs obviously focused on getting their house in order before the postseason. The Chargers, just one of the biggest layings of eggs of the entire season. Been a nightmare year for them. So my inclination would probably be to take the points, but my bigger inclination is this is one that I'm just not going to bet.
In that case, we will move on to Broncos-Raiders. Raiders 3-point favorites at DraftKings right now, but we get this one at 2.5 in the contest. I like the Raiders here. Both teams eliminated from playoff contention. Vegas currently slotted 11th in the draft. Broncos are at 14th. I don't think either team really cares all that much. Yeah, obviously, they both have kind of questions at quarterback going forward, but they're probably not going to be in that zone. Might be looking to trade up if anything, or kind of looking at that secondary tier of quarterbacks. But I don't really like what I saw from Denver last week. I know they won, but it was not really convincing. It didn't look as clean as I thought it might with Jarrett Stidham. I thought they'd maybe unleash him a little bit more. And, granted, he's without a couple of receivers and could be down Cortland Sutton again this week, by the way. He did practice in full today. We'll see. I think he's trending toward playing, but we'll see what the snap count ends up being. I think the Raiders just care more right now. I think they want to win this game for Antonio Pierce. I think the players want Antonio Pierce to be their full-time head coach. And I think if they win this game, he's going to have a good chance for that to be the case. Motivationally, I don't really think it's there for Denver. And, Raiders get this game at home. It feels like, despite being eliminated, they're trending in the right direction. They're building momentum, whereas it feels like Denver's kind of been moving the other direction.
I think one of my favorite things about this week, especially as you read off the playoff implications from each game, is the Broncos are eliminated, and yet they're somehow still factoring into the playoff race
right.
in some form or fashion. It's like you guys are done, but it still might have an odd ripple effect somewhere else across the league. It's, I don't know, for some reason that just feels like a perfect situation for Denver to be in week 18. But completely agree with what you're saying about the Raiders here in this spot and Antonio Pierce and the turnaround that they've kind of had since canning Josh McDaniels. So yeah, no, I like the Raiders here. I think that line is small enough. We just need a field goal to get this done. Yeah. Give me the Raiders.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly. It's in all likelihood going to be low scoring. It's not going to be an easy one, but I do like the Raiders quite a bit. Total sitting at 38. Eagles, Giants. Some implications on the line here for Philly. They could clinch the NFC East still with a victory, but they also need Dallas to lose outright to the Commanders. Eagles have already clinched at least a wild card spot, and they cannot fall any lower than the number 5 seed in the NFC. Meanwhile, New York eliminated from playoff contention. They currently hold the number 5 pick in the NFL draft. This one worries me. I've been kind of an undying Eagles supporter. They made me look silly these last few weeks. I thought kind of the hullabaloo around the Eagles was a little overblown, and turns out I was very wrong about that. They've now dropped 4 of their last 5 after that 10-1 start. Philly defense has allowed at least 100 yards rushing in each of the last 7 games, including 221 on the ground to Arizona last week. Early in the season, John, they held opponents under 100 yards in 8 of their first 9 games. So the defense is slipping. The offense looks out of sorts. And, now you're facing a Tyrod Taylor-led Giants team, which everybody loves Tyrod, right? He's like a 500 quarterback basically in his career. I think that gives the Giants a little bit of a boost here. And my main concern is this game is going on at the same time as Cowboys-Commanders. And if the Cowboys take care of business, all of a sudden, any motivation to win this game for Philly could go down the drain in the second half.
Yes. I remember when we were talking a few weeks ago, right after Philly signed Shaq Leonard, and I was like, I don't know, there's something up with these guys. It feels a little bit desperate. And you definitely counter that with that's just sort of what Philly does. They brought in Ndamukong Suh last season for the push and blah, blah, blah. And, it's like, okay, well, all right. So that's just kind of their brand. But I don't know, the Seahawks game last week is particularly concerning. And like you said, there is the chance here where if Dallas is doing what it's supposed to do here, then the Eagles, they're stuck. They can't get that number 2 seed and therefore, get out of Dodge regardless. So I don't want to bet this one. But if I absolutely had to, I probably would take the Eagles because I think they want to have some modicum of momentum going into the postseason. And I think playing against this Giants team, plucky as they may be. I think this is a good spot probably for the Eagles to correct some things before, stuff really starts to matter.
It's funny you say that because that's exactly what I wrote about last week's game against Arizona. I was like, man, Eagles got to push here. Like they got to build some positive momentum. And then like the problem with trying to do that is if it backfires, then you feel even worse about yourself, right? Like you're like, all right, we got a crap team coming in the Giants. Let's get some things sorted out. Let's feel better about ourselves going into the playoffs. But if you go hard to win this game and you struggle and you barely win it or you lose outright, then you're really scrambling going into the playoffs. So it's going to be an interesting dance, I think, for Philly. If Dallas ends up big in the second half, what is the merit in keeping starters in versus saying, all right, whatever, we'll take the 5 seed, we'll play an NFC South team in round 1, we'll feel good about that, and we'll just try to avoid injury. So it's really difficult to predict. Obviously, a lot of it will hinge on whether or not Dallas can even get to that point, but. I kind of lean the same way as you. I think if I'm Philly, if I'm an Eagles fan, I would want my team to play hard here to try to recapture something and build some positive momentum going into the postseason.
Yeah, losing last week basically necessitates them having them need to come correct this week.
Yeah. All right, let's do Dallas Commanders real quick since we're kind of on that subject anyway. Dallas, they have clinched at least a wild card spot. They can lock up the NFC East with a win or a Philadelphia loss. A win would also lock Dallas into the number 3 seed by virtue of beating the Lions straight up last week. Washington, shockingly, eliminated from postseason contention. They currently have the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. If you're Washington, you don't want to be out of that top 3. So I think there's reason to believe that if there's any franchise that would prevent itself from winning a meaningful game, I feel like it would be Washington. I could see Josh Harris gluing himself to the field, if they're leading late in the fourth quarter to try to generate some sort of forfeit. But I do think with the number 2 seed and the division on the line for Dallas, kind of trying to officially stake its claim as hey, we're the team to beat in the NFC East. It's not Philly anymore. I expect Dallas to come out fast. It's just a question of, if they're up 20, do they let that lead slip away and they win this game by 10 instead of winning it by 14 or 17?
Yep, Cowboys by 10. Final answer. I think Washington has no interest in winning this game, and the Cowboys have no interest in making this a 60-minute game.
Okay, there we go. Right to the point. Rams 49ers. Niners 4-point favorites right now over the Rams. It's interesting to me that the Rams have seeding implications on the line. They apparently don't seem to care if they're the 6 or the 7 in the NFC. And, as of right now, you don't even know who you would play. So that's fine. Maybe they don't see much of a difference between what would likely be Dallas or the Detroit Lions. But the Rams have already locked up a playoff spot. They got that out of the way. San Francisco, we know, has locked up the number 1 seed in the NFC. We will be getting Carson Wentz against Sam Darnold. In my article this week, John, I compared this to watching Jaleel Okafor play Marvin Bagley one-on-one.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not the NBA guy I once was, but even I know that those are two sorry individuals as far as draft expectations versus reality was concerned. It is interesting the Rams' indifference to their seeding. It went so well for them in Dallas last time, right? Why wouldn't you just want to do that again? But seriously, I think this game kind of comes down to Carson Wentz a little bit. He's going to be rusty, of course. Darnold looked pretty good against the Ravens, I thought. So I think that, but we don't know what ingredients he'll be cooking with. No McCaffrey. You got to figure that, some of the other star players in that offense are going to be resting for this one. So a little bit harder to look good with whoever their backups are. It's kind of escaping me at this point. I mean,
I don't know if Elijah Mitchell's going to play either, by the way. So then you're talking.
They cut Willie Snead.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, I don't know what to expect. I mean, there's been no indication quite yet that Debo and Kittle are going to be fully held out. I would be shocked if they play a full 4 quarters.
So yeah, they'll be present, but maybe not all the way. Although every snap that Kittle's out there and Debo too, they're going to be going after it. But I think I'll just go with Wentz being bad, trying too hard, and just kind of almost like in a boxing match, just letting the guy tire himself out. That's what the Niners are going to do. They're just going to let the Rams keep taking their shots with Wentz, have it go extremely sideways for them, and the Niners end up winning this one. But as far as the spread is concerned, I do not want to touch this one.
Yeah, I like the Niners as well. We know on the LA side, no Kyron Williams, no Cooper Kupp, and no Tyler Higbee. So you're taking out your top running back, your top receiver, your top tight end. I think Puka Nacua is going to play. I think he's going to get the rookie receiving record, and then he's going to be out of there. And I think the Niners have better depth, right? Like if we're talking like a backups versus backups game, I trust Sam Darnold more than I trust Carson Wentz, and I trust the San Francisco infrastructure on both sides more than I do the Rams, who are a very top-heavy roster in general. So I think the Niners are the side there. All right, we got one more game. That's the game of the week. Bills-Dolphins. This one is down to 2.5 in favor of Buffalo at DraftKings. It locked at 3 in the Circa contest. I think you and I both feel the same way on this one. We both like the Buffalo Bills to go into Miami, kind of save this just wacky season that could somehow end with them being the 2 seed. It could somehow end with them being completely out of the playoffs. Whichever team wins, they clinch the AFC East and the 2 seed in the AFC. Miami's already in no matter what. Buffalo, in all likelihood, is going to be in no matter what. Even with a loss, they would need some other things to go against them. But as shaky as the Buffalo offense has been to me, John, over the last couple of weeks, I think this is a spot where they show up. And Miami's just so banged up right now that, to me, I think they would almost prioritize being healthy for a meaningful playoff game over trying to win the division.
Yeah, I think we get full strength from both sides here. I think that the NFL chose this game for a reason. The stakes it being what they are, and the different scenarios at play. But yeah, Miami, the vibes are just off after last week, and Buffalo. I mean, they've kind of scraped by the last couple weeks and gotten no criticism for it, which that is kind of like the Buffalo thing. A lot of the times, like it felt like this year was like the first time they've ever caught any heat from the media whatsoever during the Josh Allen era. But then they beat the crap out of the Cowboys, who don't beat people on the road, and all of a sudden, they're God's gift and everything. But I do think in this spot, begrudgingly, I think the Bills go down there and kind of make a little bit of a statement. So it's interesting to me that, like, when you check the lines on Monday, were you surprised to see the Bills favored by 3?
Given what we had just seen from the Dolphins, and given that they lost some more key players to injury, not necessarily, because I think Buffalo always gets respect. So maybe it was a little shocking, but to be honest, not that shocking. No. Okay.
All right. I was just a little bit taken aback by that, but at the same time, I think when you add those contextual issues in, that definitely makes sense. But let's see here. I thought I had seen some interesting number about the Bills in totals on the road, but it's actually not too strong of a it's just 3 and 4, so nothing overly significant there. But beyond that, I think that the Dolphins are just a little bit too banged up here, and I think the Bills are a little bit more experienced in this particular setup. I know the Dolphins made the playoffs last year and lost to the Bills, but no, give me the Bills.
This one opened at 1.5, by the way, prior to week 17, and then was bet up to 1.5 in favor of Buffalo, and swelled up to 3, and again now 2.5 at DraftKings. But I think it probably settles at 3. We're both on the Bills there. We like that one, John. That means it's time for our parlays, our teaser, our locks of the week. I was going to say the last ones of the season, but we will be doing this through the NFL playoffs. So we're not done yet. We got 4 or 5 more weeks left in us. They're going to be diminished slates, but obviously more important ones than a lot of the games we're dealing with here. Give me your NFL Week 18 parlay of the week.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't hear no bell. We're going through the Super Bowl. Excited about that. I have 2 parlays for you. I'll start out nice and easy. Bears money line.
There we go.
Cardinals plus 3.5.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still out there. It might be down to like 2.5. And Saints money line. I don't want to mess with the spread on that, but I do want the Saints in that one. That'll pay out plus 634. You want to get a little bit more chutzpah on this one. We like the Bears money line and the Cardinals money line. This is all money lines.
Okay.
The Indianapolis money line.
Whoa.
And the New England money line. That's almost 20-1.
How does it lose? Tell me how it loses.
The big dog just stood up. Like, he's so jazzed about that. Look at that.
All right. We love it. I have a measly single parlay to hand out, and it's eerily similar to yours, John. We're taking Arizona we're taking Chicago spreads, and we're taking the Las Vegas spread, 2.5. All those teams got to win. They got to cover. That gets you to about 6-1, but I feel a little inferior after that 20-1er.
I can definitely see it come in though. The one I'm most scared about is probably Indianapolis, and I still give them a very good chance of winning that game. And we let off the show talking about that game. I do think Indianapolis wins it.
Okay, there we go. 7-point teaser this week. We are teasing the Dallas Cowboys from 13 down to 6. Just, don't want to worry too much about that backdoor. I think they win that game by at least a touchdown. Got to win to clinch the division. New York Giants, we are teasing them up from 5 to 12. And, we're relying on a little bit of scoreboard watching. So I think we probably need Dallas to take care of business. We need Philly to perhaps take its foot off the gas, or maybe Philly to just play like it has for the last 6 weeks. And this ends up being a close game, but we get a 12-point cushion there. And we're also going to pair that up with teasing the Titans from 3.5 to 10.5. And again, we might be able to get that one a little bit higher later in the week if that line does get to 5 or back to 5.5 where it was a couple of days ago. So Tennessee, they just got to keep it to a 10-point game. Giants got to keep it to an 11-point game. And Dallas has to win by a touchdown.
I'm digging it. I like that Giants angle, particularly because, like last week we talked about it. It's like, I don't like the Eagles to cover double digits right now, period.
No, they haven't done it all year. Why would we like it now? All right, my best bet, John, I'm going with the Raiders. I'm really diving in on the narrative, something I don't do very often, but I like the Raiders to win this game at home, and I like them to cover 2.5. What about you?
Yeah, the Raiders discussion that we've had this afternoon definitely has me fired up for Vegas. So I'm with you on that one, but I'm sticking to the lean that I've had all week. It is the Chicago Bears +3. So I know in the parlays and everyone still, I stand by them. I like the Bears to win that one outright, but if we're just doing the best bet period, just a little spread, little Bears +3.
There we go. We thank everybody for listening along live on YouTube or on Twitter. Do we stream this on Facebook? I don't know. We might have. But either way, RotoWire Facebook, RotoWire Twitter, RotoWire YouTube. That's where you can find all of our video content. You can fire us up on TikTok, on Instagram. We are all over the place. And, of course, you can find the audio version of this wherever you get your podcasts. John, I got to run. I got to go talk some NBA on the radio. But we will be in close contact over these next couple of days as we lock in our Week 18 Circa entries. CircaLasVegas.com, by the way, if you want to head out, check out Stadium Swim, check out the big game party coming up in about a month or so. Always a good time over at Circa. Again, that is CircaLasVegas.com. John, good chat with you, man. We'll talk next week.
Likely, sir. Or likewise, sir.